G'day guys, welcome back to a new episode of the Boundary Riders podcast, episode 125. We have a lot to talk about today with only a few rounds to go in the regular AFL season. We'll of course be covering the injury and suspension updates throughout the week. Some sad news regarding the retirement of a star player in the AFL. The grand final entertainment this year is quite controversial for some people. The father-son rule and if it should stay in the AFL, and some unrest around the St Kilda Football Club, and to see if there could be a mass exodus at the end of the season. That and so much more. So let's roll the intro and get straight into it. Welcome to the Boundary Riders podcast, your one-stop shop for all your AFL content needs.
He looks at his options and Jack Ginnivan says, boys, you brought me to the club to do justice!
But this guy has Flog written all over him.
From attack down, Reed sprints away from Petrarca, leaves him in his wake, takes a second bounce, takes a third. The sheer arrogance of Harley Reid. Finish the job, young man!
So let's get into the footy news from the week that was. So guys, as you can clearly tell, my brother is away this week. He was here the last couple of weeks, but unfortunately, well, he just wasn't pulling his weight, was he? So I thought, it's about time. I'll give it back to solo me. But I mean, obviously, he's just at work. So hopefully we can get some episodes in towards the end of the season as well. But we will start with some news topics throughout the week. And sad news on the Giants' point of view. It does seem Jake Stringer has done his hamstring. He's going to miss multiple weeks, you would imagine. And really does put a dampener on the Giants' hopes of making finals now, because the Dogs are really hot on their hammer, and it's going to be tough for them to make the finals now if they win their next two games, they're fine, but they lose one and the Dogs are right there ready to pounce. The Dogs can get 2 wins. They've got West Coast this week, they'll win that, but then the Dockers in round 24 is going to be tough. But the Giants lose and the Dogs win, they will jump in. So with Jake Stringer, pretty good form so far this season, especially the last 8 weeks or so that's going to be a massive loss for GWS. They may be able to get Jesse Hogan back this week, but still going to be tough there for GWS. But on a couple of suspension news, first of all, this was from yesterday. This was from Sunday, sorry. Rory Laird got offered a 1-match ban for a bump to the head, which, I don't think it's really a bump. I think that he just got there late to a contest, and unfortunately, he just collected the opponent and went down at Jamie Cripps. It was just a little bit unlucky. It wasn't a severe injury. I can't believe he got a week for it. I'm sure the Crows have already said they're going to challenge it, and I believe he'll get away with it. I don't think he should be getting a week for it. It looks like a bump, but the reason why he's done it is because he wasn't going to get there for a tackle, so he's quickly braced for impact and he's hit Jamie Cripps. It wasn't a bump. It wasn't a head-high hit of any sort of deliberate act. It was just an accident, and this should be let go. However, the Liam Duggan one, he has got 2 weeks, and I think that's probably a fair call against Riley Philthorpe. It was. He came off the ground, Philthorpe, and a lot of question marks were being thrown around about if Philthorpe would actually return to the field. He eventually did, which probably saved Duggan from getting anything more than that. However, he has been given 2 weeks at this stage. Means that the only other captain that the Eagles have had available for the last 10 or so weeks of the season is out, and that means that Liam Baker has taken over as the captain for the remainder of the 2025 season, and I think he'll probably take over as full captain next year. I think that the way they announced it was kind of like a little tester to the West Coast Eagles to see how they would react, and I think the majority of people believe that this is the guy going forward. I can't see Liam Duggan doing it, and Oscar Allen is out the door. So I think they're going to start fresh with Andrew McWalter. I think he wanted to give these guys a year, but I think now it's kind of the way to move on. And I think it's a really good decision from them in the end. He's been there through those big years at the Tigers, went through the tough years as well. I think he's probably the guy to lead them. Jack Graham, I thought, could have been an option, and if they wanted to go with someone who's been at the Eagles his whole career, maybe Brady Hoff, but I think now they're pretty well adamant to go with Liam Baker, and I think that's a good decision in the end. Now, on some signing news, Nick Watson has recently extended his contract at Hawthorn until the end of 2029, so that's good news. Really funny way they did present it as well, so I really like that, and I really like the character that this guy's brought to the game. I know some people can not like it. I'm not a fan of him ducking, but the personality that he's bringing to the game is great, and I think that we need to keep that going. But something that was very interesting over the week was an incident in the Brisbane v Swans game, and this was very strange. So this happened in the forward 50 for the Brisbane Lions throughout the game. It was a free kick that went to Nick Blakey, and then all of a sudden, Henry Smith kind of grabs at the backside of Nick Blakey and kind of, I don't want to say fondles because I think that's too graphic, but he kind of grabs at his backside, and it's very, very weird. And apparently the AFL didn't think there was any sort of reason to investigate this. The Swans didn't issue any sort of complaints. So, I mean, I guess we just pushed this aside, but it was very weird that Henry Smith has grabbed him on the backside and pinched him where he did. And I thought, a bit weird. And I think every single person that saw it was like, what the fuck is he doing? Why is he grabbing him from the back? It was such a strange thing for Henry Smith to do. And that's pretty much all that's came out from his career so far. Had a good game 2 weeks ago against the Pies, and now he's going to be known as the backside pincher for the rest of his career. Well, he's at least going to be known that for the rest of his season anyway. But also some sad news throughout the week. I mean, I don't know if it's sad. I mean, it's a very good career that he had, and he's probably been a little bit injury ravaged throughout the last few years, but Nathan Fyfe has decided to retire from the game at the end of the season. And I just wanted to cover the accolades that this guy's been able to achieve since being an AFL footballer, because it's been absolutely crazy. I still remember when he debuted back in 2010, and he was the AFL fantasy young kid that everyone was watching. He was so good. Everyone thought that, I think he was drafted actually as a centre-half forward, but obviously eventually became that midfield bull that he's known for. But throughout his career, played 245 games at this stage, 178 goals, got a Rising Star nomination, Best Young Player of the Dockers in 2011. In 2013, 14 and 19 was the best and fairest at Fremantle. He won the Matthews Trophy in 2014 and 2015. Of course, in 2015 as well, he did win the Brownlow Medal along with 2019, and was an Australia representative in the International Rules Series, also in the All-Stars game in 2020. What else he done here? He was a club captain between 2017 to 2022. Took over from Matthew Pavlich, I believe, and he was a great choice, I think. And has he won anything else? He won a Jim Steins medal back in 2017 as well. I mean, he's basically knocked out every single award except for a premiership medallion and a Norm Smith, and I mean, I guess a Coleman, but that is something that he very well could achieve this year if he's one, out of staying in the team, but two, if his team can go far. And I think it was a very interesting way that he ended his retirement announcement with the Dockers. He said, let's go win the cup, and he sounded like it looks like they're determined, Fremantle. They think that they can do it now, and I think with the form that they're in, they're peaking at the right time of the year. Now, we'll get into the tips a little bit later in the podcast, but if you did see it on the main channel, I have tipped Brisbane this week. But I did also mention the fact that if Fremantle can win, I think they can go all the way. And I still sit with that. I think that the Brisbane will win this week. I think that they're going to respond, and I think Fremantle have to finish in the top 4 to win the flag for me. I don't think they can. I think they need to have at least a semi-final, at least one final in Perth at the very least. But we've seen teams be able to do it from outside the top 4. We saw Brisbane last year and the Bulldogs back in 2016. Unfortunately for them, the Swans aren't there to beat. Fucking, I can't believe the Swans are the only team to lose against teams that have finished outside the top 4. Fuck's sake. Anyway, I think Fremantle can seriously do it. I think they've got all the attributes there, and they're hitting the form at the right time. Now, I think the Crows are probably the favourites at this stage, and Brisbane, Collingwood, Geelong probably sit around the mark as the better teams right now. But I seriously think they can, and I would really love to see it. And it would be a fairy tale finish that many people would love to see. I think a lot of people would probably be barracking for Fremantle as their second team this year going into finals. I mean, maybe a little bit of Brisbane, maybe the Gold Coast as well. But I think everyone's if my team doesn't win it, I hope the Dockers do. That's where I'm sitting anyway. Obviously, the Swans can't win it, and I would love to see Fremantle get their first premiership. They deserve it. I don't know if they deserve it, but it feels like they're starting to get something going there, and it would be great to see a team win the flag, because I mean, the last time we saw a team win their first flag was Port Adelaide back in 2004. So it'd be great to see. Hopefully they can do it. That'd be really nice, and it would be a great way to send off Nat Fyfe. Now the question is, would he be in the team if they made the grand final and won it? That's a little bit, I don't know. That'd be interesting. You've got Hayden Young to probably come back into that side. There's a couple of players probably, vying for spots from Peel Thunder. If they want someone if he's a sub, potentially, I think he'd be a great sub. He's be the only Fremantle player, I believe, in the list right now he'd be one of only a couple that have got grand final experience or even finals experience. I guess they played a couple of years ago, but yeah, I mean, I think he would probably bring a lot more experience, bring that grunt midfield toughness that they probably would need a little bit through the finals. So I think he probably would be around the mark. He'd definitely be the 23, 24, 25 player. I think he's definitely worth of that. So hopefully we can see Fremantle go all the way. That'd be a great send-off for such a champion of the game, Nat Fyfe. I still remember that game back in 2015, it was, I think, when they played the Crows at Adelaide Oval. Him and Patrick Dangerfield going head-to-head. It was probably one of the biggest match-up games we've really seen in the last decade. It was such a great game. Nat Fyfe and Paddy Dangerfield both had absolute blinders. I think because Fremantle won, Nat Fyfe probably got the win in the end, but overall it's such a great game, such a great matchup, and such a great player. So congratulations. Hopefully, for Fremantle's sake, they can, that would be a wonderful send-off, but just have to wait and see. Next up, we get to the grand final entertainment, which has been announced that Snoop Dogg's actually going to be the entertainment for the grand final, and some people are not impressed by this. A lot of older people, I would say, aren't, because they're like, why are they getting a rapper to do this? Or why are they getting a guy who's, I don't know, controversial, I guess. I think this is a great get for the AFL. Now, I don't think he's at his height as what he has been in, years gone by, but he's still one of the most famous artists in the world. And I mean, he only did the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. So this is a massive get for the AFL. It gets them on the map for the grand final. This is a massive achievement for them to get this. They got Ed Sheeran a while ago. They've got some pretty big acts in years gone by, but I think this will be one of the biggest. And I think it's a great thing for the game. Now, I know some people can say, oh, well, why didn't they get an Australian artist? Why didn't they get someone that we all know and love? And I mean, I get that, but also we need to grow this game to the world. And the game itself, I think, is worth world recognition, but it's not going to be getting there just on the game. You need to get it through different eyes, and I think this is a good way to do so. And what better way to, get the AFL in the world limelight than to get a big artist to do the grand final. I'll be interested to see what he does do. And Andrew Dillon did bring up an interesting little tidbit when they mentioned it in the interview, that there could be a collaboration with someone in the entertainment, or the part when he does it at half. I think it'll be halftime probably, and pre-game. So that would be interesting as well. I think they're trying to get a little bit like the halftime show in the Super Bowl. That's probably where they're trying to direct it to, and I think that's more than fair. You got to try and grow this to. I mean, let's be honest. Not many people watch the halftime entertainment in the AFL Grand Final. I don't. I usually go and make a coffee or go do something, whatever's going on, right? But I think this would be a good way to get people to start watching as well. This is how you get advertisers involved. I mean, heaps of advertisers and heaps of money will be going into this grand final, because you want to be linked up with Snoop Dogg's entertainment, right? So I think this is just overall a great thing for the game, great thing for football, great thing for Australia as well. Because I think for a while now, the NRL has kind of been kicking the arse of the AFL in halftime entertainment. And I think now that this should be able to win it. I don't know what the NRL are doing this year with the grand final entertainment, but I think overall this is a great decision. Well done for the AFL to get this done, because yeah, I mean, it must have been a pretty tough job to do so. Hopefully he does well as well. Hopefully he doesn't just phone it in. That'd be something that'd be really tough. And look, as you could probably tell, I'm not really into rap. But even I can see the positives of this. And I think this is a great idea, great job. And I think the AFL deserve a lot of praise for the way they've got this done. Pretty secretive. I think we've heard rumours about this for a little bit, but overall, very well done from the AFL. And I think it's a great thing for the game. But now let's talk about St Kilda, because over the last couple of days, I would say, there's been a little bit of unrest around the team. A couple of players, there's been some rumours regarding if they would want to leave, or they're a bit, I don't know if upset's the word, but a little bit disgruntled about the fact that they're offering so much money for players outside of the club, and some other ones that have been there for a long time now may not be getting the money they're probably worth. Now, the player I'm kind of alluding to here is Cal Wilkie. Over the last couple of days, there's been reports regarding him being bemused a bit. Doesn't really understand the fact that the Saints are, throwing a huge amount of money at Lika Lear, for example, a guy who's played less than 50 games, Tom de Koning as well. And then we've heard some news this morning, so Tuesday morning when I'm recording this, that Harley Reid has been offered $25 million over 12 years. Now, I understand the AFL is growing now. Players are going to get paid a lot more, especially with the pay increase they got last year, I think it was. But that's a huge amount of money for a guy that's played, again, less than 50 games. And I know Harley Reid is the generational talent, but that is a massive offer. And I would understand why there'd be a few St Kilda players going, hang on a minute, why am I not getting paid? I mean, I'm sure Cal Wilkie's not sitting there saying, can you pay me $2 million a year? I don't think he's that kind of guy. But I also don't think that I think he'd be sitting there going, hey, why are you throwing Leaker Lear 900,000 when I'm not getting that much money? I don't know. I think that's probably a reason for why they'd be a little bit upset or a little bit feeling like, hey, we're being a bit left out here. We've got a huge amount of money just sitting there, and you're giving Tom de Koning that amount of money when I've been a couple of time All-Australian in defence, standing up against some of the key forwards in the game that just would demolish us if it wasn't for me. So I understand his unrest around all that. We've seen Marcus Winhager being linked to a couple of clubs. There's been a little bit of concern around potentially him leaving. And then, of course, the big story is Nasiah. Is he going to stay at the Saints or is he going to go back to South Australia? And I don't want to be the guy who just makes up something here. But for me, the fact that the Saints are offering money, like Harley Reid money, that's over $2 million a year, indicates to me that they can't be paying him as well. You got Tom de Koning coming in on 1.7. They're offering Harley Reid that amount of money. Nasiah's Wanganeen-Milera has got to be at least in between those two, you'd have to say, wouldn't you? So surely they can't pay all three of them and then get a bunch of other players, or then lose a bunch of other players around that mark, because they've been linked to others as well. The Saints have been linked to Liam Ryan from the West Coast Eagles. There's been a couple of others as well. So they can't keep Nasiah for that amount of money. Tom de Koning bring in for a huge amount and have Harley Reid. I think that, to me, that kind of indicates that they are at the very least planning for life after, if Nasiah does leave, and at the worst, they think he's out the door. So I think that's a big watch for the Saints. I do understand why players would be pretty upset if you're a Saints player who's been there over the years, and then all of a sudden they've got all this money to throw at different players that, why aren't I getting a lick of that ice cream? Why am I not getting a bit of that money? Because they have been there through some tough years, and they've been able to keep the club from, not being in the bottom of the ladder. Like St Kilda are, in history, have, I think, got the most amount of wooden spoons out of any club in the AFL, VFL at all. So they've been there through some tough years, and there's been very little success. So for players that would be like, hang on a minute, where's my money? I would totally understand it. And I would definitely sit there with the likes of Wilkie, who I think's a massive, I think he's one of the best defenders in the game. If he could come back to South Australia, I think that Port Adelaide and the Crows would be stupid not to look at that now. Even if it's not true, and it very well may not be, it does have a little bit of like a eerie feeling to the manager of the player has talked to Cal Wilkie and said, why are you not being offered this amount of money? And it's kind of like leaked something to a journo to then try and get his contract increased a little bit more, which, is that, I don't know. I get that's fair. I think it's fair for Cal Wilkie to want more money, but also, do they have to do they have to push this out there over a journalist? Should this maybe have been talked to a couple of list managers or whoever's running the contracts at the club? I don't know, but yeah, I think overall St Kilda, I don't think Cal Wilkie will leave. I think he'll stay. I think that he'll probably be paid a little bit more. We've seen in recent weeks, Darcy Cameron, there's been a lot of talk regarding him wanting to leave the Pies because he's not getting paid enough. And then even though he's still contracted till next year, he recently re-signed a contract extension. So maybe that's what he's trying to do with his management, Wilkie, and I think he does deserve a little bit more. If they're going to be playing Leaker Lear that amount of money, then by all means, they should be giving Cal Wilkie a little bit more, I would say. I think that the guy has carried that defence for a very long time. He's played way above his height and body structure. He's played against some of the big key pillars of the AFL and has been able to stand up against them. So, Cal Wilkie, get that bag, bro. And to any SA club that is looking at here, that heard this story, I bet you the Crows and the Power were both immediately on the line saying, hey, Cal, we'll offer you this amount of money to come join us. At the Power, you could almost make him vice captain at this point, maybe even captain. I don't know. If the Saints want... Now, I know I don't know how exactly old Cal Wilkie is, but if I'm the Power, I would almost consider a Zach Butters for Cal Wilkie deal. I think that the Power struggles so much in their defence, that would just elevate their defensive 50 50-50 stocks so much if the Power could get a Cal Wilkie type. The Crows, I think, it'd be great, obviously, but I don't think they would necessarily need a Wilkie. So I don't think he'll go, but I think it's a very interesting topic to talk about because the Saints are obviously throwing these deals out with haste and with all these huge dollar signs on it. They're not really looking at their backyard. And I think there was a report this morning saying that Ross Lyon, I think, talked to the players and said that because the drafts are so compromised and that sort of stuff, this is the way we are going to compete. We're going to offer money to some players to bring them to the club. And maybe that sat a little bit wrong with some of the players there. Maybe they thought that, why aren't you paying us more? I don't know, but that's a very interesting way that Ross Lyon potentially put it. And I don't know. I think I'd be interested to hear what you guys say. If there's any St Kilda supporters listening, make sure to let me know what you think about this. I mean, like I said, I don't think Wilkie's leaving, but I would understand it. Make sure to let me know what you think. But speaking on drafts and all that sort of stuff, there's been a lot of news over the last month or so regarding if the draft is compromised. And I think it's an obvious fact that it is. Let's be real. We've seen so many players through father-son academies be not ruined, but I think have been definitely hampered on some clubs in the competition that we've seen. Players like Jamara Ugle-Hagan go at pick 1 to the Bulldogs, and obviously, now look, that's not a great look in hindsight now, but the Crows were the ones who had that pick, and they would be pretty happy right now that Phil Thorpe's doing so great. But there'd be other teams that would be thinking, hang on a minute, that's a bit unfair. That the Bulldogs, a team that's been around the mark, get the number 1 pick, even though the Crows were right down the bottom and they didn't get it. Now, it worked out for them in the end, but still. Otherwise, as well, you look last year's draft, for example, Levi Ashcroft came to the club and in pick 5, even though the Brisbane Lions were the premiers. And I do like the father-son rule. I like the academies. I think they're needed, the academies especially, because for the northern states like New South Wales and Queensland, because they have to grow the game there. And we've heard that from players themselves, like in Sydney and Queensland, the academy players that stay there are the reason why they get into footy is because of the academies. And I think that's great. And look, I understand that I'm going to be a little bit biased because I'm a Swan supporter. And, you know, we've had Nick Blakey, Errol Gould, and Isaac Heaney, Cal Mills from the academy. Or not all of, from the academy. So I do understand that some people are going to sit there and say, oh, you're biased. You shouldn't say the academies are more important than father-sons. But, or they should stay. I think it should stay over father-son rule. I think that at the very least, the father-sons should be pushed out to round 2 of the drafts. So if a player like a Nick Dacos, a Sam Darcy can be picked up in the first round of the draft, and then if he wants to go back and play for his club of where his father played, then they should offer a reasonable price. Now, maybe you could say that for the academies as well. I wouldn't be exactly opposed to it, but I think the reason why these players that are like father-son picks, they're always going to play football most of the time. Like, they weren't going to stop and play a different sport. But a player like an Isaac Heaney has even said in interviews that he probably would have gone and played rugby if it wasn't for the academy that got him involved in it. So I think the AFL would lose a chunk of that market in Queensland, in New South Wales, if they were to not necessarily abandon them, but if they had them there, maybe they should let other clubs be involved in maybe poaching them. But I think that that's a way that you can probably leave them. I think that they should leave the academies the way they are. They should have to pay a lot more, those clubs, the Swans, the Giants, the Lions, the Gold Coast. They should have to pay a lot more to get those academy players into their team, especially if they get to jump so much higher in the draft. But I think that they are needed for those northern states. Father-son picks, I think, are a little bit different. I think that players like the Dacoses and the Darcys and all that sort of stuff, they're always going to play football anyway. And I think that those clubs should have to pay up to, at the very least, pay way overs for it. Like, have a huge amount of picks in the back end, or have to trade something. Like, they have to have a first round or 2 first round picks to go up, and they can't just use future first round picks to go up the draft, or, you know, they got to do something drastic if they want to go pick up a type like a Nick Dacos, because we always knew that he was going to be a star. We always knew that Darcy was going to be a star. Like, we always expected them, maybe is the better word than new. But yeah, I just think that that's something that the AFL need to consider. It is a compromised draft, and it's always going to be if the academies and the father-sons are always in it. That you could definitely make the argument that they just get rid of all of it and just leave it as whatever team finishes bottom gets that first pick unless they trade it away. Maybe that's how we should do it and make it completely even over the board and 100% believe the Saints and everything. But I do understand that people just say that the Saints are whingers futures because they've wasted a lot of their draft picks, like picking up Paddy McCartan at pick 1 and then missing out on Christian Petrarca at pick 3, or Billings at pick 3 and then missing out on Bontempelli at pick 4 because they picked the wrong player. At the end of the day, the draft is a bit of a lottery, and you're not always going to get it right. Paddy McCartan was a bit tough as well because of all the concussions he went through. Jack Billings never really hit the heights that you wanted to, especially when you compare him to Marcus Bontempelli. It's always a bit tough. But yeah, I mean, it's probably not the club that you really want to have as like the excuse makers or whatever you want to call it. But maybe it is that you strip it all the way back and just make it 1, 2, 3 picks as, you know, last, second last, and third last. And you make it that way. I think that they need the academies, the AFL, to keep the New South Wales and Queensland markets alive and keeping those players, those clubs continually generating, I think. But, you know, make sure let me know down below. And I really am interested to hear about your guys' thoughts regarding this, because I think that there is a lot of talk lately regarding the talent of the AFL, and it's going to continue to be diminished as we get Tasmania into the competition, and inevitably you think there's going to be a 20th team in the AFL, so it's going to continue to get diminished. And I think getting rid of the academies in Queensland and New South Wales just sucks out a lot of the potential player pool that we could have in the future. Maybe I'm talking out my ass, I don't fucking know, but I think that I've articulated that a little bit better. But, you know, let me know what you think. Make sure to roast me if you think I'm a bloody idiot. But anyway, let's now move to the preview to the new round. Round 23, couple of rounds to go now, and we are set for an almighty finish to this season. At this stage, there could even be the Lions dropping out of the 8 if things fall into place. So many teams could fall out. There's only 9 spots left in the AFL, 9 teams to make 8 spots. One team's going to be heartbroken. So let's get into my tips and preview to the new round. And this round will make or break the top 8 in my opinion. We have so many massive games to come, and we're going to be starting with the Friday night clash, one of the biggest games of the season in my opinion. Freo up against the Lions. Now I know the Crows and Pies game is going to be the game of the round, but don't sleep on this matchup. The Dockers are probably the hottest team in the competition right now, while the reigning premiers will be hungry to get back on the winners list after last week. The Dockers have been final quarter specialists this season and have proved time and time again that they aren't afraid of teams above them either. And I don't think playing the Brisbane Lions is going to scare them one bit. Now, on the Brisbane Lions point of view, their form's been a bit up and down in more recent times. Now, I've been on the Lions bandwagon for a lot of this season, and I've thought that if they can get everything going right their way, then I honestly think they can win the flag. However, right now, their form isn't tracking the way they would want it. They have knocked off the Dogs and the Magpies in the last month, but they've also lost to the Swans and were absolutely thumped by the Suns. So consistency has to come back for Brisbane if there's any chance of going back-to-back this year. Now, I have said in countless videos now that the way to beat Fremantle this year, or pretty much for the last couple of years, is to tag Caleb Sarong. And for some reason, teams refuse to do this. Freo have only lost once since their bye, and that was against the Swans, who heavily tagged Caleb Sarong. We've seen little run with jobs with Caleb Sarong in previous times, but no full lockdown. And with Brisbane not being a traditional lockdown team, I'm pretty unsure as to if Brisbane will be doing this. However, one player that does these sort of roles, at least at stoppage, is Josh Dunkley. So I wouldn't be too surprised if at the very least Dunkley tries to quell Sarong at times. Now, another thing to consider is the fact that the Lions have lost some key figures in their D50, especially last week. They sorely missed Ryan Lester through concussion, and Brendan Starskovic through a late withdrawal was a massive loss as well. Now, they should get those two to return this week, which would be a much added boost for the Brisbane Lions. And another factor of this game is the fact that the Lions don't tend to lose 2 games in a row. Just before their bye, they actually did lose 2 games in a row against the Crows and the Giants in nail biters. But then they went down to the Cattery and won that game, which broke a 21-year drought or something. And Chris Fagan doesn't tend to let these sort of trends continue on for a very long time. So I do expect a much needed response. So that's the real reason why I'm actually going to be picking Brisbane. I know it's the biggest trip in footy, but I'm putting my faith in Brisbane this week. They were extremely poor against the Swans last game, and really the scoreboard flattered them. They were absolutely smashed. So I think if they can win this game in the middle of the ground, their forward line looks very dangerous. And if they get some cavalry in that D50, then I think they can knock off one of the hottest teams in the competition. However, in saying that, I was super impressed by Fremantle's fight back last week, and they've been one of the most impressive teams so far this year, especially after a pretty poor start. So if they are to win this game, they obviously amplify their big chances of making the top 4. Even though this is in Perth, I think this is a bit of a danger game for them. This really is a test to see if Fremantle can contend. If they win this, the Dockers, I think they could be right up there as a team to contend against the Crows this year, which I think are the premiership favourites right now. My brother is also tipping the Lions. He says that Brisbane seems to be playing a lot better away from home this year. They have lost 4 games at the Gabba this year, but have won most of their games away. It was a disappointing performance last week, according to my brother, but the response will be needed, like they did against the Pies a couple of weeks ago. He doesn't trust the Dockers just yet, but he'd be happy to be proven wrong. So next up, we get to the Expansion Cup. Gold Coast up against the Giants. We only had one about 2 months ago, but these two teams both needing to win this game. Gold Coast, of course, to absolutely make it a certainty to make finals if they win it. They should be able to make it anyway with the game in hand against the Bombers, which is pretty much a certain win. However, to solidify that spot, they need to win this. And if they do go on to win this game, the Suns, they give themselves a real opportunity to make the top 4. While GWS right now are probably the most vulnerable team inside the top 8. Their percentage is very low compared to the Bulldogs, who sit 9th. And the Giants have some pretty tough games coming up. The Gold Coast this week, and then the Saints next week, who have proven to be pretty good in the last month or so of football. Now, these two teams have only played 8 weeks ago, where GWS stormed home in the final quarter and basically stole that game after the Gold Coast absolutely dominated the first quarter and a half of it. Now, the Giants have a pretty good record against the Suns. However, the Gold Coast are a much different kettle of fish compared to years gone by. So looking at the recent record for these two teams, before the Dogs game a few weeks ago, the Giants were probably the form team of the competition, but that flogging did do a lot of damage to their reputation. While the Suns have been in pretty good form as well. In their last 5 games, the Suns have been able to beat the Pies, Lions, Tigers and Blues. So 2 very good performances and then 2 wins against some lesser sides, but they were smashed against the Adelaide Crows. So both these teams are coming off 4 good wins, but also a flogging in recent times. Now, I'm going to be tipping GWS in this game. Even though it's up in Queensland, I think there's one big reason as to why. I simply have more trust in the Giants right now. If it wasn't for that loss against the Western Bulldogs a few weeks ago, I honestly could see the Giants as flag contenders this year. That game did knock those beliefs a little bit for me. But if I'm comparing these two teams as contenders, I have the Giants out on top. And that's why I'm backing them in this game. The Gold Coast, for me, have been very good side for 2 or 3 quarters. There's been a lot of games this year where they have dropped off, including the game a couple of months ago against the Giants. Even last week against Carlton, they dominated that game for 3 quarters and almost were overrun. So the Gold Coast, for me, haven't proven themselves as a full 4-quarter performance. I really don't know if they can contend this year. I think they could finish in the top 4, and very well, if they win this game, they should be able to. But right now, I just don't have the trust in the Gold Coast as much as I do the Giants. Now, my brother's also tipping GWS. He has said that the Giants have won 5 of their past 6 against the Suns. Just think leading into the finals pressure may get to the Gold Coast team. But the Suns need to simply stop the influence of Tom Green and Finn Callaghan. Both of those have been real catalysts this year in the midfield, and he doesn't think they can do so. But now let's get to the game of the round. Pretty much the game of the year. It could well be. The Crows, the current premiership favourites, up against Collingwood, the flag favourites throughout the majority of this season. Both teams coming off some pretty poor performances last week, though. The Pies were absolutely smashed against the Hawks in almost embarrassing fashion, while the Crows almost got knocked off by the bottom team on the ladder in the Eagles. So both will be looking for a response. Now, we'll be interested to see if the Crows have a plan to go after Nick Dacos. We have seen Sam Berry and Peatling do a job in the past for Adelaide. Peatling is a little bit of an injury cloud on him. He was subbed out in the second quarter last week, so we'll have to wait and see on that front. But I think the Crows will most likely go head-to-head with the Pies midfield, at least early on. But I think this game will be won in the Crows forward line. If the defense of Collingwood can hold up against the likes of Thilthorpe, Fogarty, Rankin, and the returning Taylor Walker, I think they can win this game, Collingwood. They have a very good record at Adelaide and a very good record against the Adelaide Crows. But with Jeremy Howe out, Darcy Moore simply has to pull his finger out. And he needs to lead this team from the front. He, along with many others, have really dropped their colours in previous weeks. And if they want to be seen as contenders once again, then they'd take a real step forward back into the limelight with a win at the Adelaide Oval against the Crows. However, I really can't see that happening. Collingwood's confidence looks absolutely shot at the moment. And Adelaide right now look way too strong up forward for the shaky Pies defence. Now, if Jeremy Howe was in this side, I probably could see this game as almost 50-50. Because the venue doesn't scare the Pies and the opponent doesn't either. But the forward line of the Crows will on Saturday night. So I simply can't see a way where Collingwood's defence can stop all the avenues for the Crows going to goal. And I think Adelaide's defence this season has been terrific. So they should be able to get the job done against Collingwood and almost end their premiership credentials. I really can't see the Pies winning the flag without being in the top 4. So if Adelaide win this, I think they knock out a contender. But my brother is also picking the Crows. He has said the Collywobbles are crap at the moment, and with no Jeremy Howe, he can't see this getting done. Darcy Moore has lost all his form, and the Crows have way too many avenues to go. Defensively, the Adelaide Crows have also been very good as well. Last week's result doesn't really change his thoughts about Adelaide at the moment. He thinks they get this one done. But now to the final game that we're going to be taking a look at here as a deep dive. It is the Swans up against Geelong. Sydney are really becoming the spoiler team of 2025. They've knocked off the Dockers and the Lions in recent times and have threatened against others. Now, we'll be interested to see if the Swans have a job for James Jordan. In previous meetings against the Cats, they've gone after Tom Stewart, and both Bailey Smith and Max Holmes immediately come out as potential targets. However, I think they need to send him to Brian Myers. Myers gets involved in pretty much every single score the Cats are a part of. And if the Swans can stop his influence, I think it does go a long way into a potential upset for the Swans. Now, looking in recent form, both teams have got 4 wins from their last 5 games. However, Geelong's last 4 wins have come against Essendon, Port Adelaide, North Melbourne, and St Kilda. So 3 of those teams are in the bottom 5, so not exactly massive performances. And last week's game against Essendon showcased a massive problem with the Cats at the moment. And it's pretty interesting because I think it's actually their biggest asset as well. Jeremy Cameron. He's kicked 79 goals this year, has been leaps and bounds ahead of any other key forward in the game, and very well may be the first guy to get 100 goals in a season since Buddy Franklin. However, in recent weeks, Geelong have made a concerted effort to be Cameron focused when heading inside their forward 50. And it's starting to have a negative impact on their team as a whole. Now, against teams like Essendon, Port Adelaide, North Melbourne, it's not going to really matter. Because, let's be honest, their defenders are a lot lesser than some of the top teams in the competition. But this week, he'll be coming up against an informed team. And it's also a team that Jeremy Cameron hasn't had a great record against. So I'm not saying that the Cats need to steer clear of Jezza by any means, but simply keep their options open. Don't just blaze away to Jeremy Cameron and hope for the best because he has a chance of getting 100 goals. Only go to him when he has a good matchup or he has the good amount of space. The goals will come for Jezza Cameron. He's just such a star. He can't get away from kicking goals. We've seen that already this year. I mean, the games that he has kicked the bag, a lot of the reason why he does so is because the other options are there. It's so hard to stop all the different Cats goal kickers. But Jeremy Cameron is one who can get away because he's so creative. When you can double, triple team him and Cats are so Cameron conscious, the defenses of different teams can triple team him and the good defenses will be able to stop that. And because of the last few weeks of the Cats being so conscious of trying to get it to Jezza Cameron, I was actually going to tip the Swans. Off the last couple of weeks, I was incredibly impressed by the Swans' performance last week, the way they moved the ball, and I didn't really think Geelong had a matchup for Isaac Heaney. However, I am going to be going with the Cats for one reason. Brodie Grundy will be out. He was being chucked into concussion protocols after that little injury at the end of the game against the Lions. So the Swans without Brodie Grundy, I really can't see them getting this one done. He's been so influential through that middle of the ground this year for Sydney, especially in their resurgence of form. But without him, I really can't see the Swans getting this one done. Geelong should be able to find a way. I still am a little bit concerned about the Cats and being so conscious on getting it to Cameron and trying to get him 100 goals. But I think without Brodie Grundy, the Swans can't win this game. Now, my brother has also tipped the Cats. He said it's going to be a closer game than most people expect. The Cats are really looking for Jezza at the moment, and if they do lose, it could be because of that. Now, he does bring up a point about who can stop Isaac Heaney. He thinks that Tom Atkins will do it at stoppage, and when he goes forward, it will likely be Zach Guthrie. He can't really see Oisin Mullen doing the job that he's done in previous time because he just can't stay with him on strength, which I tend to agree with. If Mullen does go to someone, I wouldn't be surprised if it's Chad Warner. But guys, with that being said, let's get to our full tips for round 23. So my tips are St Kilda to beat Essendon, Brisbane to beat Fremantle, GWS to beat the Gold Coast, Carlton to beat Port Adelaide, Hawthorn to beat Melbourne, Adelaide to beat Collingwood, Richmond to beat North Melbourne, Geelong to beat Sydney, and the Dogs to beat the West Coast Eagles. And my brother's tips for round 23 are St Kilda to beat Essendon, the Lions to beat Fremantle, GWS to beat the Gold Coast, Port Adelaide to beat Carlton, Hawthorn to beat Melbourne, Adelaide to beat Collingwood, Richmond to beat North Melbourne, Geelong to beat Sydney, and the Dogs to beat the West Coast Eagles. But now, guys, let's get to our certainty tips for this round. My brother has got to pick first this week. He has chosen Brisbane to beat Fremantle, of course, the Lions losing to the Swans last week. And my certainty tip this week is Carlton to beat Port Adelaide, of course, the Blues losing to the Suns last week. And finally, guys, let's get to the tipping ladder for the channel. And Leviticus has jumped another tip clear. He got 8 out of 9 last week. He was one of the few people who tipped Hawthorn to beat Collingwood, so well done to him. He did miss out on the Brisbane Swans game, but that was a bit of a tough one. He now jumps 4 tips clear in front of Marcus M, who used his joker a week or two ago and jumped right up into second spot. Braxton is in third with the 142. Probably those 3 guys right now are really really the only ones who can win, and Leviticus holds a very nice lead with 2 rounds to go. I'm sitting in 6th spot right now, still got 7 last week, but I really can't see a way where I can get it from here. I'm going to have to get 8 tips. That's going to be tough. I've tipped a couple of roughies this week. I think the Giants up against the Gold Coast is a bit of a tough one. Brisbane against Fremantle as well could go either way. Port Adelaide and Carlton's game could go either way. There's so many 50-50 games for mine this week, so it's going to be a very interesting round. Guys, make sure to let me know down below your tips going into round 23. And actually, let me know down below as well which team you think is going to miss out on the finals. I'm still leaning towards the Bulldogs. I think they're a little bit far away at this moment. I think the Giants can rally in the last couple of weeks, but I think it's out of those 2 teams right now. Next up, we get to my brother's betting segment, of course. He has given us his bets for the week, and he's made an interesting call at the end of it. Now, I'll let you guys hear it, but I was very surprised by his bet regarding a Brisbane Lions forward, and I'll just say that if he gets this one right, he is Nostradamus. He can just read the future, because it's only a small amount of goals, but this guy has been incredibly out of form lately. So let's not tease you. Let's not cock tease you anymore. Let's get into bro's bets for this week.
Alright guys, let's get into round 23 of the AFL. There's no Thursday night game this week, so we'll have to go straight to the Friday night football for the same game multi. First leg is Jackson McRae for 25 plus disposals. Second leg is Andy McGrath for 20 plus disposals. Third leg is Mason Redmond for 20 plus disposals. And the final leg is Roland Marshall for 20 plus disposals, valued at 360. My certainty bet this week, I'm taking Ollie Wines to pick up 25 plus disposals against Carlton on Saturday afternoon, valued at $1.36. And my outside the boundary bet this week, I'll be taking Eric Hipwood to kick 2 plus goals against the Dockers on Friday night, valued at $2.95. And as always guys, gamble responsibly.
Up next, of course, we get to the fantasy segment for this week, and I had probably the best week of the year for me. Very good score, we'll get to that in a moment, but just a quick little note of condolences for my brother. Just had a shit week. Lockie Ash with the 29 just absolutely capitulated his team, and right now I'm going to beat him, so it's going to be pretty sad for him. I've told him that he has to run around the street naked as a result. We actually put the idea out there that if he thought he was that confident that he was going to beat me, that he's just going to go out there and run straight naked around the neighborhood. And it's pretty sad too, because it's that's a bit far for a joke. I was going to say it's around a school, but it's not. Anyway, let's just move on. Let's just get to the fantasy segment for the week. And my week was very, very good. I scored 2,412, which equates to a rank of 3,251. So I've done very well the last couple of weeks, and a couple of good trades over the last couple of weeks for me has really skyrocketed my team, especially in our channels league. Now, Nasai Wanganeen-Milera as the captain, I was probably expecting a little bit more, but 118, I'll definitely take that. Harry Sheasel, very nice with the 108. McCarthy with the 88 was very nice as well. Bailey Smith with the 120. Jordan Dawson with the 147. Bontempelli 120. Merritt with the 132. Kennedy with the 102. Just a lot of big 100s over the board. Gawn 121. Marshall 135. Cameron into the team this week with the 104, along with Luke Jackson. Isaac Rankin with the 107. Now, there were a couple of players that didn't score too well. Can't be too mad though. I mean, I think I had a pretty decent week, obviously. Nick Dacos only got 88, wasn't great. Angus Brayshaw, not the greatest. In fact, that's Andrew Brayshaw, sorry. 76. I would have liked a little bit more. Tom Green saved his score with the 95 in the end. And Caleb Daniel is in the firing line this week with the 70. But still, I mean, I can't complain too much. It's a very good week from me. And I've had a bit of a struggle this year, so I'll definitely take that. Now, my brother scored a lot lower than me. He was very surprised when he finally learned of my score. He only scored 2,238. And there's a couple of good scores here. Lockie Whitfield, not too bad. He had Zach Butters with the 122. But there are a couple of lesser lights here, which we have to definitely look at. First of all, the one that's glaringly obvious is Lockie Ash with the 29. Just couldn't get off in that game throughout the afternoon. So really sad, only at 29. That's very, very poor. Had Jordan Clark. He only got 61. Brody Grundy was very poor in the... Brody Grundy didn't have the best game, only got 83. Noah Anderson with the 65 struggled. Had to use the score of Liam McMahon with the 62, so overall struggled throughout the week. But I'm sure he will try to bounce back. The rank that he is at right now is 12,603, and my overall rank is 11,580. So I'm 1,000 in front of him at this stage, so I'm pretty happy with that. But for now, let's get to the trades for the week. So at this stage, my trades are Zach Merritt out with a hand injury. He will be out for at least a week. And I've picked up Caleb Sarong. And then I've got rid of Caleb Daniel for Will Ashcroft. Now, it may have been a bit of a surprise, a couple of those trades, especially Caleb Sarong. Hasn't really had a big couple of weeks. However, his two next matchups I really do like. When he gets tagged, he does struggle to score, but the last two games he has is against Brisbane and the Dogs. Neither of them are prone to tagging. I don't think they'll go near him in either of those games. They'll go head-to-head, so I think Caleb Sarong can definitely get off the chain. Does that mean I think Fremantle will win those games? Well, check out the tips to find out on the main channel. But I personally don't think that's going to be a big deal for Caleb Sarong. I don't think that's going to hamper his score, so I had to pick someone that was a little bit lower in price to pick up Will Ashcroft. And the reason why I've picked up Ashcroft is because last week we saw against the Swans, he was, I think, Brisbane's best player on the ground, especially in that first half. And because Lachie Neale's out basically until the final series, I think Ashcroft's the one to stand up. And I think that he's starting to really come into his own. Caleb Daniel simply had to go, so I swapped out one of my midfield forwards that were in my midfield into the forward line. Will Ashcroft's gone in. Had him throughout a lot of the year. When I took him out, all of a sudden he hits peak form. I think he's only scored under 100 once in the last 6 weeks. So really happy to bring in Will Ashcroft. I'm pretty confident with that trade. And my brother's trades for this week are Brodie Grundy out, Rowan Marshall in, and he's got rid of Liddy for James Sicily. Now, he had to get rid of Brodie Grundy because he's going to be out this week through concussion protocols. Pretty bad news there as a Swans fan, but he's brought in Rowan Marshall. At this point, he's just trying to copy everything that my team has done, which, I mean, is understandable. I'm doing a lot better than him. But he's got rid of Liddy and picked up James Sicily with the cash that he generated from the Brodie Grundy trade. Sicily been jumping into a bit more form in the last fortnight, last month or so, which is good to see. Has been a very good scorer in AFL fantasy in years gone by. Hasn't really hit those heights this year, but pretty much the only player he could really get at that price range. So not too surprised by that. But at this stage, let's finally get to our league for the channel. And the Cheetah Cub still holds the top spot. However, the Welshman in second place had a very productive week. He scored 2,504, one of the highest throughout the league. He is in second, still holds that top spot. There was really no movement in the top 10. It looks like only the Wizards of Bontsville jumping up to 8th and Dewar Leaper has dropped down to 10th. But other than that, the league at the top 10 stays the same. Going down the list though, towards where me and my brother are placed at, Cobb's crew, first of all, I can see there, 2,513. That's a brilliant score, jumped all the way up into 32nd place. A couple of players around that mark scoring around 2,300 or so. I'm sitting in 38th. I've jumped into the top 40. I didn't think I was going to be able to do that, but I've jumped in there at least for now. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I can continue on that sort of form. My brother has dropped down to 40th. So he's pretty much fighting for trying to beat me at this stage, but it is pretty close at this moment. Because of that good score from me, I've jumped up about 82 points in front of him. So we've been neck and neck throughout the year. That's my goal, to try and beat him at this stage. It's going to be tough, but I think I can do it. But guys, that's pretty much all we've got for AFL Fantasy's review for this week. If you did enjoy it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. If you are in a head-to-head league, make sure to let me know as well if we should be doing one of them next year. Of course, we'll continue on doing AFL Fantasy leagues and that going into years to come, because this has been super exciting this year. Our channel was pretty small at the start of the season. I think we were about 2,000 subscribers. We're nearly at 3,000 now. And we still had over 80 people join this AFL Fantasy League at the start of the year. That was the main channel, of course. So make sure to let me know down below if you want to do a head-to-head league next year, as well as a full competition like this. I think it has been really exciting for all of us to really follow that. But I think a head-to-head league would be exciting as well. It's like first in, first dress, best dress. I think that'd be a really good idea. And finally, guys, of course, we get to the Flog of the Week. Now, I don't know if this one will compete with the last couple that we have brought up, because we pretty much have our top 3 nominees for the Flog of the Year, which we will be revealing in maybe not next week's, probably next week's episode, actually. But if it's not next week, it'll be the week after. But throughout the week on the main channel, we'll actually be revealing the nominees for the Flog of the Year, the Goals of the Year, the Marks of the Year as well. And we'll be revealing the winners of all of that in the Boundary Riders Awards stream on the main channel, which will be happening in the week of the finals bye, of course. We have been doing that as a tradition. It'll be the 3rd ever Boundary Riders medalist as well. We've been giving the votes throughout the whole entire season on the main channel through the review. I'm sure you guys have seen it already, but this one still deserves a little bit of spotlight throughout the week. So the Flog of the Week this week goes to the AFL advertising on the website of the afl.com.au. Now, I don't know if you give this Flog of the Week nomination to the sales team or to the someone in the AFL, but I will flash up a picture on screen right now of the AFL website and the Sportsbet advertising on the website. And it takes up, at the very least, 3/4 of the screen. Or maybe half. Maybe I'm being a little bit harsh, but half of the screen it takes up, and it is a bit ridiculous. Now, I know we obviously have a betting segment on this channel and this podcast, so you may think that I'm being hypocritical, and I don't think I am. We always say to gamble responsibly at the end of it. I think that gambling it's not great. I mean, I don't think it's brilliant, but I mean, you can make it up for any point. Like drinking probably isn't great either, but people do it, and I don't think it's that big a deal. I don't think you should ban betting. I don't think you should ban gambling, especially, and I don't even think you should really ban the advertisement of it either. I think that's fine. I think that people should be educated a lot more on those subjects, though. I think that advertising for betting needs to be a lot more, less of, oh my God, make this bet and you could win $1 million or that sort of bullshit. And you're like, they're so excited about it. And then at the end of the advert, they go, gamble responsibly. What could you be buying instead? I think they could make it a little bit more of like, I don't even think they need much of a warning, but I mean, don't make it so flashy and all that sort of bullshit. But anyway, I think this should be called out because I think overall, the AFL website, by the way, is a website that everyone accesses. It's not like a news article. It's not even that. It's an AFL website. Kids use this. And the fact that there's a huge 3-way banner that goes across the screen and shows multi-bets, new markets, AFL sports betting, new multis, all this sort of bullshit, ticks and crosses everywhere. It's a bit much, I think, anyway. I mean, is there even any other advertising on the screen? There's a thing for Telstra on there, a little one. And look, there is a banner underneath the bet that does say what gambling is really costing you and has the hotline that you call. But I think that it's a bit of much for an advertisement, I think. I think the AFL should be a little bit more cautious about this. I'm not saying, I even think it's fine to have advertising for betting. I think that's fine. But I think this is a bit excessive. Surely there should be a little bit of, little bit of leeway here because this is a website that kids would access, and I think that very much parents should be watching what the kids are doing. That's more than fair. And I think that, iPad kids are not great, obviously. They shouldn't be fucking looking and scrolling all the time, like all that sort of crap. But, this is a bit much. The AFL website doesn't need this much. Like, surely they don't need this amount of money. I mean, I understand sports bet are going to be throwing them huge amounts of cash to have this advertisement out there. Because, I mean, it takes up fucking half the screen. Of course they will. But, of course, they'd be throwing a lot of money at it. But surely the AFL could say, okay, you can have a banner on the left or the right-hand side, but you can't have a whole fucking curtain raiser in front of the fucking website. Like, the thing is nearly as big as the thumbnail picture for their 25 most best players in the AFL at the moment. I think it's way too big. It's way too much. I think you could make it a bit smaller and, lose a couple of grand. You think? Maybe AFL? It's a bit much. Anyway, that's the vlog of the week, Anyway, guys, that is the vlog of the week. And of course, that is the end of the episode of the Boundary Riders podcast. Sorry if it is a little bit shorter this week, but, with my brother not being here, it's kind of hard to talk into the void for an hour and a half or however long the episodes usually go for. They usually go for about an hour, but this may go for about 50 minutes. So hopefully you guys like a little bit more of a shorter episode this week. But, if you did enjoy this episode of the Boundary Riders podcast, make sure to leave us a like and subscribe over on YouTube. And if you are enjoying it over on Spotify, you can actually leave comments on Spotify now if you want to. We're over there, Boundary Riders podcast, always linked down in the description anyway for YouTube watchers. If you want to go listen to it over there, make sure to leave us 5 stars and make sure to follow so you're notified on the podcast and the review every single week. And, make sure to keep on liking, subscribing, following, commenting. We've been posting clips about the podcast on different social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok, and they've been going pretty well. So you guys seem to be enjoying this podcast as we're getting towards the end of the year. So really do appreciate your guys' support on the main channel, but here as well, because we're a little bit more small. We're obviously a little bit smaller here. So, I really appreciate every support on every platform that we're all on. But yeah, thank you guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll catch us all next week.